Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the September 22nd Oklahoma State Planning Commission meeting. And if you are not the applicant and wish to address us, there are sheets like this on the table outside the chambers which you could complete for the case you want to address us on, and we would be happy to hear you. With that, we'll go to the minutes, Russell, of our September 8th meeting.
Move approval.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the September 8th minutes. Cast your vote. And they're approved.
I was not here, so I abstain.
Okay. Continuance requests?
We have 4 uncontested requests for continuance. Item 18, which is SP 440. Item 19, PC 10283, request to continue until October the 13th. Item 20, which is SPUD 628, and item 21, which is PC 10279, a request to withdraw.
And did anyone come today to talk to us about any of those items just read?
Move the uncontested request. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the continuances. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
New request for continuance, we have item 6, which is SP 439, item 10, PUD 1443, item 11, C 6298, and item 17, request to continue until October the 13th.
Same question. Did anyone come to address us today on items 6, 10, 11, or 17 on our agenda?
Move the additional continuance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the additional continuances. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Are there any continuance requests from the public today? Okay. Consent docket?
We have 4 items on the consent docket today. Item 1, CE 810. Item 2, C 6302. Item 3, C 6306. And item 4, C 5580.
Again, the same question. Did anyone come to address us on items 1 through 4 on our agenda today? A motion to approve the consent docket would include deleting TE number 2, I think, on item 2. Is that correct? JJ, did I get that right?
TE 5 on item 2.
TE 5, okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Cast your votes, and that is approved.
And items requiring separate vote. Item 5 is SPUD 629, application by Jeremy Gardner to rezone 1000 Northwest 37th Street from the HP District to SPUD 629 in Ward 2.
Hans, if you did introduce Tori and yourself and give us your address.
My name is Hans Blitzer. I am a partner with Jeremy Gardner and Tori Blitzer and Blitzer Gardner Architects.
I'm Tori Blitzer with Blitzer Gardner Architects.
And we are presenting a SPUD located at 1000 Northwest 37th Street. The property in question has historically always been a multifamily zone property. Unfortunately, the structure stood vacant for some years. In that time, it effectively lost its multifamily status. The neighborhood in which it sits, Crown Heights, is zoned for single family. At the beginning of the year, a developer bought the property and is rehabilitating, renovating the building to its original status as a multifamily structure. Given the fact that it lapsed, we're basically asking for the property to regain its multifamily status that it has had historically.
Okay, no one has signed up. Commissioners, Janice?
I was just going to say, this may be as close as we ever get to a happily ever after, to a long, sad story around this horseshoe. This has been a pretty remarkable transformation to a piece of property that has just been beyond an eyesore and a thorn in the side of not just this neighborhood, but the whole area for a very, very long time. I think that the uses that they're making of the property are absolutely appropriate, but also the detail and the care that's being given to retain as much of the character of the original structures as is possible under the circumstances is fairly remarkable, and I really applaud this effort and wish you the best of luck and move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 5. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Item 6 has been continued until October the 13th. Item 7 is C 5788, which is an extension of the final plat of Highland Estates in Ward 3.
Is the applicant here? Commissioners, this is a standard extension.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 7. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Item 8 is SP 442, an application by Ernesto Reyna for a special permit to operate an auto sales dealership in C3 Community Commercial at 301 Southwest 59th Street, Ward 4.
If you would give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Ernesto Reyna with 301 Southwest 59th Street. I'm here to request if we can get our special permit to open auto sales. I have an auto sales at 1017 Southwest 29th since 2005. We got the opportunity to buy this place at 301 Southwest 59th, and we continue to see if we can move our facility over there, which is currently already, the building, everything is already there. We're just asking for the permit to be able to rezone.
Is there anything being done on the site now?
Excuse me?
Is there any business being run on the site
Not at
right
the time.
now?
Not at the moment. We were waiting for the city to hear their answer, to be able to. We bought the building. It had an auto sales from 1992 to 1996. Mr. Bill Middleton sold it to me, thinking that I could just move in and open my auto sales, but we later found out that it was there with a special permit or a special exception, which is not a special permit. That's the reason we had to cancel our plans till we got approved. Or
Have you read the staff report?
yes, I have.
And did you note the unfavorable considerations?
Yes, I do. I mean, the building has been there since, it operated for 14 years under the same building. I mean, it ran there. The only reason it is because Mr. Middleton, the man that sold it to me, turned it into a muffler shop, but it was an auto sales for 14 years. I mean, we plan to have not too many cars, anywhere from 10 to 15 cars. So, I mean,
Well, there's no other similar kinds of businesses there, no outdoor display or anything of that sort. Jimmy, do you have any?
I was maybe ask the staff, how long has it been since there's been any kind of business on that corner? You know, JJ?
Well, car sales, 1996,
Yeah.
which is what we were just told.
96. I think the last thing was a muffler shop.
yeah, it was
Is that right?
Mr. Middleton who sold it to me. It was a B&M muffler.
So would that would fit the category of open display, wouldn't it?
No?
No, there wouldn't be anything outside in C3.
C3?
C3.
Straight C3? And you purchased the building?
I sure did.
You purchased the building
We purchased the
thinking that
building
you
and
could
the
put an auto sales in there?
Yeah, and Mr. Middleton he told me, he said, you probably wouldn't have a trouble, when you auto sales, and it's the reason that we have another business about 3 blocks up, and we got the opportunity to buy that building thinking that we can move our auto sales from Southeast 29th to there, and to come find out when we went to put the application in, it was only there permitted with a special permit, so it's the reason we had to go through this process of
How long have you owned the property?
The property, I've owned it for 3 months. We're going on 3 months on the 1st.
Auto sales are common on Southeast 29th Street,
Yeah.
but not
Very
common
common.
on 59th Street, and I'm not sure we want to create that precedent. It's been discontinued for 15, 16 years at least.
What is the auto repair shop to the east? There's, shows a child care, and then
There is, on the east, there's a child care, and behind it's a church, in front of it's smoke shop.
right next to child care, it says on our staff report, it shows auto repair. What is that?
The auto, there's no building there. Excuse me? That's
Yeah,
the
it
east.
appears to be vacant.
Yeah, it's vacant. We have a repair shop 2 blocks up on Highland and 59th. That's an auto repair shop.
In the northwest corner of that C3 track on the corner, it says
Yeah, but it's
auto repair.
vacant.
I didn't know if that was in business, carry over on the staff report, or what it was.
It's there, it's some kind of an auto repair garage of some kind.
Yeah, there's a building. It's skated in and everything.
Thank you.
You have another car lot where?
It's on Southeast 29th. It's at 1017th.
You're going to move the whole thing here?
Yes, that was the original plan, is to move into that building and be able to sell, cars out of it. Have a license there, make improvements to the outside as far as landscaping, the fence and all that, since we bought the building.
No, I hate that you bought the property under those conditions, but I'm a little bit skeptical about having a car lot on that lot because of the way 59th Street is lining up. And I'm going to recommend denial.
It operated for 14 years, so, there was an exception at one time, so
Yeah.
we're just hoping that you would give us the opportunity to continue.
We have a motion and a second for denial. Is there any further discussion, Commissioners? If not, cast your votes. It is denied.
It is denied?
It is denied.
Item 9 is C-6299, which is a revised preliminary plat of Kings Park Villas in Ward 5.
Good afternoon. I'm Kendall Dillon with Craft and Toll, representing the applicant, and this is a 10-acre tract that currently is zoned PUD, with the base zoning being R1ZL. As you can see, it's an infill parcel that's got some difficulties. We're very limited in terms of frontages, and some few restrictions there that are associated with this particular tract, in the sense of we don't have any access to Pennsylvania. I think in regards to the staff report, we are in agreement with all the TEs. If you'll notice on TE number 2, the way that is written, we've tried, but we've been unable to acquire enough easement or right-of-way to connect back out to Pennsylvania. However, my client is pretty confident that we're going to be able to work it out and have sufficient enough access or right-of-way to provide an emergency access, just not an actual two-way local street. So we are agreeing to the fact that we will have an emergency access that connects from Penn back over to, you can see, the northwest corner of our property. I did meet with the Oklahoma City Fire Marshal's office, Captain Williams, and his primary concern was whether or not we were or were not going to sprinkle the homes in this addition. we have, based upon that and his concerns, we've agreed to sprinkle the homes, and yet again, like I say, we're agreeing to provide that emergency access. So that's what we've been able to do. And I think if you look, obviously we still have a local street that we're tying on to, but currently right now, even if something were to block the entrance, in regards to the concern of emergencies in the back of the Woodhaven addition, currently there's no way to access that. So I do think that even by us providing this emergency access, it'll provide an alternate route for emergency vehicles and somewhat alleviate that concern as to what's an existing condition. I will say that you, in your staff report, that you have a letter of protest, and with the help of staff, there was no signature or contact, but with the help of staff, we've been able to contact the lady that had sent in this letter. I visited with her on the phone, and I think some of her concerns were taken away with the emergency access. I don't know that all of them were, but I did agree to, if she wanted, with her and some of her adjacent property owners, if she would like for me to come meet with her, I offered that, and as of today, I've not heard back. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Commissioners, again, no one has signed up.
I have two comments. One of which is that I don't think that this application should be presented until you have everything tied up and signed up with the Moore School District for the emergency access. I mean, there's many slips twixt cup and lip, and that should not be something that we can project that's going to happen. But the second thing, and the most important thing, is that on that one street, what's that, 96th Street, there are 700 lots tied up on 96th Street, and I appreciate the sprinkling. I mean, I'd like to have everybody do that. That's only one aspect of it. The fire department, to get in, get out, it's blocked up. But you've got so many people on these lots all along lined up, and you've added to it on 96th Street. The density is far too great without another way to get out, and it needs to be a street that comes into your subdivision off of Pennsylvania. And I have a lot of difficulty supporting it, and it's been my consistent every time you bring it up, too. It's just too much, in my opinion.
Nick?
I'm having a little disconnect with the Greenbrier to the south and those 700 lots, Bob. I don't see how they really impact 96th Street.
All these lots right here.
No, I understand that, but that's not 700. I thought you said 700 lots.
I made that up.
It looked like 7.
It looked like 700.
There's a bunch of them anyway.
A bunch of them. I should have said a bunch.
Okay.
No. Scratch the record off 700.
Okay, that would...
Started, yeah.
Can we agree to that? A big old bunch? Okay. I agree that there are a lot on 92nd Street. But I also think the applicant is bringing something to the table that should something, with all that traffic on 92nd Street, and if somebody wants to access any of that whole big old bunch of houses there or back in Woodhaven, and there is an obstruction on 92nd, you won't be able to get there. With their emergency access, you would. He makes a good point there. The other point I would make is this is a preliminary plat. I would not suggest we approve a final plat until his easement is in place, but on a preliminary plat, frankly, I don't have that problem.
Any other discussion, Commissioners? If not, we need a motion to vary TE2.
I mean, I think that forward we could, on the TE, we have the variance at TE2, but we probably, I mean, it should be provided prior to, we should say. I think it should be a little more firm, as Bob rightly indicates. Not should be, but must be provided prior to our acting on any.
Well, we can amend
Amend that word,
TE2
yeah.
to say that this will be provided at
Yeah, I think that's what we
the
want to
final
say.
plat stage.
Because I agree with Bob that that has to be in place before we go forward.
We're talking about the emergency access?
Yeah.
At the yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay?
JJ, do you want to
TE3 takes care of that.
take care of it? Yeah.
So if we just vary TE2,
Okay, I see that. Okay, thank you.
The only thing, like you say, we're working on it twofold. We're working with the school, which really is our primary option, and I think that we're going to get that resolved. But also, as a fallback, we're dealing with the commercial office that actually is adjacent to Penn, as well as the church, to gain even access across them in the case that we don't get things worked out with school. So we're working it from two angles. We're confident, and my client is, that he's going to be able to acquire that easement, and obviously, prior to us proceeding on with the final plat, we'll have it in place.
Let me ask a question, and Commissioner Gale's comment about if this is blocked up, you can use the emergency access. What exactly will the emergency access road consist of, look like, and how wide is it, and will traffic go in, and how do you get on it from that development?
The answer to that is we'll adhere to your subdivision regulations in terms of the standard and make sure the fire departments, they've got a standard to which we provide them for emergency access. It'll be built in accordance with that as every other emergency access that we've agreed to.
Is it a paved road?
Well, it has to, it can be gravel with a base under it. It just has to support a pumper truck based upon the bearing
Is
ratio.
it a one lane or two lane?
No, it's 20 feet wide.
So two cars can go in and out,
Well,
right?
it's 20 feet, but obviously the purpose of it is for emergency vehicles only, so it kind of takes away the concern to have two-way traffic. But ideally, I will tell you that what we're ultimately trying to do is currently a concrete drive that is on the school that serves as a fire lane right now. The intent is to simply get the school to grant us a written agreement that we can utilize that as our emergency access as well, and then we will just connect on to the very end of their fire lane right into our subdivision. So that's going to be
Well, people that live in your subdivision, that they want to go on Pennsylvania, will they be able to use that access at any time at all?
No.
So it's blocked off.
Emergency vehicles only. Correct.
So
got a crash
in answer
gate
to
on
your question, it doesn't provide any other access at all.
It does for emergency.
Well, no, I'm talking about all these people that live.
Okay, well, assume for a moment, Bob, that somewhere on 92nd Street toward the west end of 92nd,
Yeah.
there's an emergency and a fire truck comes in there and what the fire department always, the example they cite, they take the corner too fast and they roll the truck. And the truck now blocks 92nd Street.
Okay.
And there's a house back here in Woodhaven or one of these houses down here on 92nd Street that needs that emergency access. Well, the truck just blocked it. They could come in through this neighborhood's emergency access, through the neighborhood, back out, and service all these houses back here.
Yeah, I guess, I'm comfortable with the sprinkling, and, if there's a car wreck, you can get to it. But I'm looking at the density around this subdivision and the density added to the subdivision, and you've got one road going into the place, in and out. And if somebody's car stalls right here, these people have no other access out, no matter what. If they're sick, they have a heart, they need to go to the store, they need to the grocery store, they can't use that emergency access. It's blocked. To get out of there. It's too much.
Without this, all those people
It's too much.
they can't do that.
No, it already is. So that's what I'm saying. It's adding to the too much. I can't get there. So.
Sure. I understand your argument, and once again, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, this is the perfect scenario. But what we are looking at is an infill parcel to which we're restricted, and at some point, how are we going to go about developing it? We obviously have an opportunity to develop it in this manner. You all may look at us at the end of the day and say, hey, this is not really what we see happening. But I think if you take a look at how the emergency access does, at least in the case of emergencies, is somebody inconvenienced when a car is stopped there? Yes. But now that we're talking about life and death situations, at least somebody has an opportunity to respond to the back versus what's there today. And then that combined, I think if you actually just look at the traffic and in essence, the level of service on this street, yes, we're adding some more lots, and I'm not going to sit here with a straight face and tell you it won't have some impact. However, what I do think is I don't think that it'll have a significant impact on the level of service that would change the level of service. And I think if also you look at Pennsylvania Avenue, it's 4 lanes, it's got a left turn lane. Not only do we have a signal at 104th, but we've got one at 89th, and there's a signal in the mid-block, which is going to provide quite a few gaps in traffic for ingress and egress for this neighborhood. So I think if you look at it collectively in the sense of we have an opportunity to develop this parcel, we feel like that by agreeing to sprinkle the emergency access, that's about all that we have an option to do. We feel like that's a good plan and sufficient, and in the end will be a good opportunity to develop this parcel and will not create any further significant level of service difference in terms of 96th Street.
Commissioner Bright?
Yeah.
I would also say, I think, as you look at the parcel and try to imagine alternatives for its development, I certainly want to see any kind of commercial use injected into this residential area, and even an office use this far off of Pennsylvania would be a little questionable. These lots are larger than the lots that comprise the other access onto Southwest 96. It's obviously not an ideal solution, but I think it's with the sprinkling and with the emergency access that they're going to provide, it's at least an acceptable option, I think.
Mr. Gales?
Do we have a representative fire here today? I did not see.
I did not see one.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, Commissioners? Action?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance TE2. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Move the application.
That's with the addition of sprinkling?
That's correct.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 9. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Items 10 and 11 have been continued until October the 13th. Item 12 is ABC 745, an application by Rick Thurman for an ABC 3 overlaying C3 Community Commercial at 3921 North Lincoln Boulevard in Ward 7.
Well, that was an impressive move. Is the applicant for item 12 here? I'm sorry? I've got this one.
I'm representing Rick Thurman. My name is Sam Swanson. This is for 3921 North Lincoln, rezoning ABC3. It's currently it's zoned ABC2. It's a vacant building. We have a tenant that wants to serve alcohol without food. Therefore, ABC2 wouldn't do it.
So it would be a club. What would be the operating hours?
Just at night, they close at 2 a.m. on the weekends.
So you'd open late afternoon?
Yes.
Commissioners, no one has signed up.
I move approval.
Party animal. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 12. Cast your votes. And you're approved. Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 13 is PUD 1442, an application by KB Investment Company to rezone 14200 North Rockwell Avenue from PUD 316 to PUD 1442, Ward 8.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Dennis Box. I'm here on behalf of Clay Farha. And this is an application where we have taken a piece of property that is within an existing PUD that was done back in 1988. And if you recall, and if Cindy, if you could move that down just a little bit the other way. there we go. PUD 1299 was put in place a while back based on the fact that we thought we were going to have a Warren Theater go at this location. That did not work out. That was just a couple of years ago. Back in '88, this entire area was put under a PUD that provided for commercial and residential uses. When you look at tracks 7 and 8 on this map, under PUD 316, that provides for multifamily residential. As we looked at it and as we dealt with our planners, they indicated that that property would be more appropriate for commercial, lining up with the commercial that is south of it. And so we took the exact acreage out of 7 and 8 and put it into 9B, and then took 7 and 8 and made that for commercial. Now, I've handed out a memo to the commission, and that provides for 29 uses that we've excluded out of our commercial development tracts, and I would like to add 3 more to that, which would be 8300.28, 29, and 30, which are communication towers. And the code deals with 4 districts. We had eliminated one of the tower districts, and so this just makes it clear that there'll be no towers within the confines of our commercial or residential area in this PUD. We, as also part of this, I showed you an exhibit of a school. Mr. Farha dedicated and granted the school district of Deer Creek 14 acres north of 150th Street, and they are to go online 2013 with that grade school, and that gives us an idea of the growth potential and what's going to happen in this area. So with that said, we can agree to the technical evaluations that you all have in front of you, and answer any questions if you have any.
Dennis, with respect to the traffic study that was done for a previous PUD, that study provided for signalization at an ingress-egress point on Rockwell at 140th Street. Now, you're not going to line up with that exactly, as I understand your plan. You will still meet the conditions of that traffic study, however?
We will meet the conditions of the traffic study and agree to them, and what will happen is when we plat the individual parcels, and we have to plat each parcel that comes in, at that point Stuart Chai and the Public Works Director will have the opportunity to review our uses and how our preliminary plat lines up with the final plat, and as you indicated, if they require a traffic light at whatever the street's called, 142nd versus 140th, then we would not have an objection to that.
Okay.
I have a question on the uses. I appreciate the deletion that I've just been handed this memorandum because my comment was just way too many. I don't know what you're doing. But if I read this right, you can still put like a large truck stop on this commercial property on Rockwell. No. Gasoline sales large.
A large truck stop would be C4.
Would be what?
C4. We're asking for C3.
Then what's the difference between small, restricted, and large?
Number of pumps. I mean, if you get a large gasoline station, there's a greater number of pumps than a smaller station.
The on-queue stations you've seen, Bob, would be gas.
Is that large?
Large, yeah.
Okay.
Some 7-Elevens also.
And you mentioned that you deleted communication services antennas, but on your list, you were leaving in telecommunication towers.
That's the 3 he just deleted.
Huh?
The 3 additional he just deleted, 83.
Well, but here's what I've got. I've got only 8300.27 deleted.
You obviously were not listening to my excellent presentation, but in my presentation, I said there was 3 more that I wanted to take out. So that would be 28, 29, and 30.
So all 3 of those, that's all gone?
Yeah, they're all out.
So your point's well taken. We agree to it. I was
trying to get my handle on what you sent, and
Dennis's voice trailed off on the last three. So.
That's okay.
And it's less than 700, so as far as deletions.
I think that was my biggest objection about the uses, and I like the way you deleted them.
Do you like our signs?
Monuments.
You'll agree to the TE, right?
We are.
I think I heard that.
Takes all the fun out of it, doesn't it? Mr. Chairman, with the deletions noted in the memo plus the additional deletions on the telecommunications side, move approval of the application.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 13 as condition. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 14 is ABC 746, an application by Soccer City OKC for an ABC 1 overlaying C3 Community Commercial and CUP 12 Community Unit Plan Overlay District at 4520 Old Farm Road in Ward 8.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. And also with me on the front row is what I'm going to call the Soccer City team. These are the owners and operators of this facility. What our application is for an ABC 1. This is a currently standing, what has been used, what originally was a tennis country club. For the past years, it's been used as an indoor soccer facility. It was run by a family. When I say run by a family, they worked the door, they reffed the games, they sold concessions, they did everything. Soccer City, which is a company that's based out of Tulsa and has operated a business there since 2005, came in and has bought this facility. They've only owned it 5 weeks, but they have made a tremendous amount of improvements in those 5 weeks. If anyone had been to the facility over the last 10 years, I encourage you to go see it because what they've done is really remarkable. They've gone in and basically gutted everything. They've added new staircases. They put new netting up. They put clear boards up on all the indoor soccer fields. But most importantly, they're cleaning up the facility. They've added 26 cameras throughout the property. The past ownership had some problems with security and people drinking in the parking lot, even though they didn't have an ABC license. So this group has decided to do what they do in Tulsa, and that is hire a police officer to work the last 3 hours every night that this facility is open to ensure that any drinking that happens in an appropriate manner and is not in the parking lot. Like I said, outside there was a lot of issues. They've gone in and resurfaced the parking lot. They're cleaning up the trash. And we've met with 2 separate neighborhood groups in this area, and a lot of the issues dealt with that. And one thing I stress to them is they've only owned it for 5 weeks. And the things that they've done in 5 weeks is incredible. But all these issues can't be resolved within 5 weeks, but they're moving towards it. This is certainly a unique facility in that it lies in a residential area and is Zone C3. And so with that, there are certain things that this group is going to be required to do and work with the neighbors to be good neighbors, and they're committed to doing that. Like I said, this is for ABC 1, which allows beer and wine. They only want to serve beer. They will have a concession stand. In the concession stand, there won't be cooking. It'll be snack-type products, hot dogs, anything you can cook in a microwave. So there's no grease traps, there's no hoods. It's just a small concession stand. I'm going to let Kerry Schubert get up here and talk about their Tulsa facility and the success they've had here, and have him answer any questions you guys have about the operations.
If you would please give us your name and address for the record.
I'm Kerry Schubert. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm the general manager of Soccer City Tulsa and Soccer City Oklahoma City. We've been in business, as David said, since 2005. We have adult soccer teams and youth soccer teams. We were just recently voted Tulsa Kids Family Favorite. Tulsa Kids is a parenting magazine out of Tulsa. It's a national award magazine. We were a family favorite this year. We have a Little Kickers program. It's 18 months to 9 years, and we have about 200 adult teams that play there weekly. In Tulsa, we have security. The Tulsa Police Department is there the last 3 hours of closing. We've had 0 problems with alcohol there. We just serve beer there. We serve beer till the last game kicks off. Sometimes that's at 10 o'clock, sometimes at 11 o'clock. But once the last game kicks off, there's no beer sold. But in the 5 years we've had it, we've had zero problems with alcohol. You can check the Tulsa Police Department or the Better Business Bureau, but we basically want to offer that same service here in Oklahoma City.
I think the thing to really focus on here, and I think part of the issues that the neighbors had when we met with them, is they saw an ABC application, and you first think bar. They're putting a bar in our neighborhood. That's not what this is. This isn't a bar. This isn't a destination where people are going to go to drink. What they've seen at their facility in Tulsa and what they're going to see here is you have adult soccer leagues. When the game's over, the team will want to sit and have a beer, talk about the game, talk about whatever great shot they just made, and that's it. You're not going to have people driving from all over to come to this bar. That's not what this is. This is just for the adults to play in this league to enjoy a beer after the game, and that's it.
Now, are there youth leagues here too, David?
Yes, there are youth leagues as well. They don't operate all year. Adult leagues operate all year, but because of outdoor leagues, they don't have indoor leagues for youth during that time, the way I understand it. So there are youth leagues, but the youth leagues kick off first. That's why they have some later start time, so that they can get the kids out, and then the adults come in.
What are the hours of operation, David?
It depends on the number of teams. As David said, in the winter is our busiest season because we have adults and youth. Mid-March through mid-November, it's just adults only. So mid-March to mid-November, the last game could be at 10 or 11, and in the winter it could be at midnight. But as I said before, we don't serve beer till 1:30 as local bars do. We serve the beer till the last game kicks off, so that could be 10, it could be 10:30, and that's how we operate in Tulsa.
What time would you start serving beer? I mean,
well,
when you open?
Yeah, Monday through Friday we open about 5:30, and then on Saturdays and Sundays we open at 7 a.m. Now we're going to serve beer at 7 a.m., but we have games at 7 a.m. The kids play that early, and the adults, that's only in the winter. The adults will kick off about 5:30. So to answer your question, we open about 5 or 5:30. We're open during the day for people to come to the office, but there's no one serving any concession area or beer during the day.
And if you're serving beer, what hours when would you begin serving beer, do you think?
First game, 5:30, and then, as I said, whenever the last game kicks off, and that changes. If we have 200 teams, or 300 teams, we obviously kick off later if there's more teams because we need more game slots. It's basically how many teams play there, but typically between 10 and 11 would be somewhere around that.
Well, we've got a number of people who signed up who obviously want to address us. But one question I would have is, in terms of selling beer, would you be willing to restrict the sale of beer to a time when no youth games are played? In other words, only when adults games are played?
Absolutely. We'll look to do anything that, we want to be good neighbors to the neighborhood as well. But that varies because, like, youth only play 4 months out of the year. So mid-March through mid-November, there's no youth games.
I'm not suggesting that the answer to my question satisfies the protesters, but it was just something that I wanted to ask.
Typically, I said we don't serve beer till 1:30, like bars do.
Right, I understand.
It just depends when the last game kicks off. But as I said before, we've had zero problems in Tulsa because typically a person will finish their game, they'll go have a beer with their teammates, and they'll leave.
I'm having trouble with that concept. You say we stop serving beer before the last game kicks off, and then you made the comment, as Mr. Box made the comment, people like to have a beer after the game, sit down, and so what do? Buy my beer before the game kicks off and let it sit there during the game and warm up?
No, if you play the last game, you just can't have beer that evening. And, say, for example, if you're in a men's league, your game might be at 7 o'clock one week and 10 o'clock the next week, because we have 200 teams to play there. So if you're the last game of the evening, that night, you don't have any beer.
Okay.
Susan tells me.
In line with the previous question about serving when the kids were playing, how late do you schedule youth game?
It depends, once again, on the number of teams. We normally start about 5:30, and the last youth game could be at 8:30. Or it could be at 7 o'clock. It depends on, obviously, the month, but March to November, it's almost always adults. Youth play outdoors.
Where I'm going with you and it may help before we hear from the protest, because my packet has numerous protests in it, if we can pin down the hours in which you would serve beer. And I'm not making this as a suggestion, but from 7 to 10 or something like that, it may allay some of the concerns of these protesters.
Nick, what I'm advised by council is that serving hours for ABC1, for example, are set by ordinance. So they could
Meaning we don't have the ability
Meaning we
to
cannot set the
place a
hours.
condition.
We cannot
on them.
place a condition.
They can agree to that if they want to, but we can't make that a requirement
can't
or a
enforce it.
condition on the ABC.
Well, I'm going to talk to my client about the hours. We can agree to it, and they will stand up to that. They're a business that's been around for years in Tulsa, and they're not going to agree to something that they're not going to do. But let me talk to my client about the curtailing of the hours and allow.
All right, we'll hear from the protesters in the meantime. And there are about half dozen of you who have signed up to speak, so I'll call your name. Bring that forward, if you would, sir, and give it to our secretary. My request is that if one of your neighbors has already raised an issue, we would ask that you bring new information to us and not repeat what we've already heard. And the first person is Carol Wangrid. If you'd give us your name and address, please.
I live at 4608 Dovetree Lane, have lived there for 29 years. And the issues that I am profoundly concerned about is what is already existing. I congratulate Mr. Schubert for their success in Tulsa. However, we live in a very densely populated area. We have residents who walk their dogs, take walks continuously throughout the neighborhood and that area. And this facility is directly almost at behind my home. We have a great deal of noise, loud music. We have people speeding, screeching tires. We have people out in the parking lot. There is insufficient parking for them as well. They're out in the parking lot. There is noise. People who drive up through Hefner Road, in my experience, and since they have existed, the other soccer place, are speeding. Now, on top of that danger, they are requesting alcohol be served. And I believe that and the residents do take walks in the evenings, even in winter. We have joggers, bicyclists, and adding to that danger would be serving alcohol. Now, typically, the soccer playing age group would be, as nationally statistically shown, would be the group that would be playing soccer. So they would linger, the parking lots would be fuller, there would be more drinking of beer, and a higher likelihood of intoxication and fights, irrespective of whether or not there is a policeman present for guarding the neighborhood. Further, when I moved there, we were promised the tennis courts. There was also a wonderful swimming pool, and I do not understand how it became what it is today. It does definitely depreciate property values, and I'm primarily concerned about the danger to the neighborhood. Irrespective of how the soccer place itself behaves, they cannot control the behavior of such a large population of soccer players or visitors, especially after they've been drinking. So I respectfully request that you do not approve this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Pilar Marcias, if I pronounced that correctly. And if you give us your name and address, pull the microphone down so we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Pilar Macias. I am at 12,000 Flowerwood Drive. My comments will mimic some of what she has already brought up. I am a mother of 2 small children, and there are a total of 8 children in our cul-de-sac. And I speak for all of us on the cul-de-sac that we are extremely concerned about allowing alcohol to be sold. Some of my comments are similar. Currently, there are already speeding issues at Meridian and Old Farm Road. That intersection is extremely busy, and they constantly have cars roll those stop signs already. Soccer City cannot control that already. We have Oklahoma Police Department set up shop on Meridian, thank goodness, to help catch the speeders going down Meridian, and I am just as much concerned as she is about adding alcohol. And this is a major route for bikers, runners, and walkers, and I'm very concerned about that. And I speak on behalf of my cul-de-sac, and they respectfully, we all do, consider our safety of our families and reject their application.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Mertens. Again, if you'd give us your name and address and share some new thoughts with us.
Yes, my name's Stephen Mertens. I live at 12006 Hawthorne Lane, which is actually right behind Soccer City. I actually have to say, good job on making it look better. You've done a huge improvement on that. I do have to say that I completely oppose this. I think it is an extremely bad idea. Everything that's been brought up was pretty much everything I was going to say. So I don't actually have anything to add at this time. So thank you.
Ramon Sutton or Roman Sutton? I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
That's all right. I'm Raymond Sutton, 4609 Northwest 118th Street. I'm representing the Rosedale Gardens addition. We are directly behind Soccer City. As they have said, they are making improvements, and it looks better. We were over Monday night, and they told us what they were going to do. We didn't get all of our questions answered about timing, like you have asked, of when they would serve liquor or beer. They said beer, but this application doesn't hold them back from serving wine. They have a snack bar. They say they're going to serve candy bars and stuff like that, wrapped stuff. It doesn't say that they can't make hamburgers and start doing that if they get approval to do this, serve beer and wine in a restaurant situation. We have had 2 or 3 people that live in our neighborhood, and we have 50 homes, and most of us are elderly people. A lot are still working. Some of us are retired. 2 of the ladies have said that if this passes, they don't believe it would be a good thing for our property values, and some are considering selling their homes, which is not good. And we just ask that you deny this application to serve beer in this neighborhood situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Bays, why don't you come up together? And also give us your names and address for the records.
My name is Betty Bays. I live at 4716 Northwest 119th, and the front of our home faces the back of Soccer City. So our view is the back of Soccer City. And I will very much commend the new owners on what they are doing. What I would have new to add is that they are using Soccer City Tulsa as their model. Soccer City Tulsa is located in an industrial section of town. They say they have never had any problems. Well, there's not residents to know about those problems. There's not issues with noise late at night. And so it's an apples and oranges comparison. I think they can be very successful serving soft drinks, lemonade, iced tea. I don't know why beer is necessary for their success. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Sir, like to add something?
Yes, I'm Tim Bays, and she pretty much says it all. It's interesting that in this week's Daily Oklahoman, there was an article about, and I know this isn't the country of Spain, but in Spain, soccer violence has gotten so bad that in some locales they are banning males from going to soccer games over there because of the violence. And I think adding alcohol in any form to this densely populated and heavily used residential neighborhood serves no useful purpose for anyone. And there's so many children involved in this, not only playing soccer, but in the families using this neighborhood on the streets and the sidewalks and the walkers and the bikers. It is unwise. It is just simply unwise to add alcohol in any shape or form to the mix in this residential neighborhood. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who didn't sign up who wishes to address us on this? David?
Yeah, just a few points. The alcohol is a concern, and the reason it's a concern is because of the way that the past ownership operated this facility. They didn't have a license, they didn't have the staff to maintain and watch what was happening, and so people were bringing coolers to their cars and drinking in their cars and drinking during the games, and that's not going to happen here. And the reason it's not going to happen here is because we had a meeting last week. When I pulled up, there was a police car parked right in front. When people see a police officer monitoring the facility, both inside and out, you're not going to have the things that were happening previously. That will put a stop to that. And there are 26 cameras throughout the facility. There will be someone in the office monitoring the cameras. So if there are things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, now instead of someone walking up and saying, hey, can you please stop, well, now there's a law enforcement officer there who can tell them to stop, and they will stop, or there will be repercussions. On the visitors not being able to be controlled, it's the same thing. With the police officer there, they will be controlled. Meridian is right there, which is a major street, and it runs right to 122nd. People aren't going to be leaving and driving around the neighborhood. People can leave the facility, turn east on Old Farm Road, and then head north on Meridian to 122nd. And on the concession stand issue, they're just going to do snacks. It's Zone C3. They don't have to get a permit to serve snacks. They would have to get approval and do grease traps, vent hoods, things like that. They don't have those things at their other facility. They don't want them. This isn't a restaurant. This isn't a bar. So those issues aren't a concern either. Now, like I said, I think a lot of the issues center around the past ownership, and this group is a group that runs it like a business. They're professional. They're not going to allow those things to happen. The Oklahoma Soccer Association is actually going to office out of this facility. That's the state agency that runs the soccer. The state agency wouldn't operate out of the facility and associate with this facility if this is going to be a bar or this is going to be just a front to allow people to come in and get drunk and be unruly. The fact that they are going to operate in this facility, I think should bring great comfort to this board that if the state agency is going to go in there, they're not going to associate with something like that. I talked to the clients on the issue of alcohol and hours. They're willing to do 11 o'clock on weekdays, and obviously if there's a game that starts before that, then that would be it, and on weekends, 12 o'clock. So those hours definitely take it out of the bar type of environment. And with that, we would ask for your support and approval.
David, tell me about the site in Tulsa. Is it in fact in an industrial area? Is it surrounded by commercial or industrial properties, or what is its environment? Give us your name, please.
My name is Stephen Brady. I live in Tulsa. I'm one of the owners of Soccer City. Our facility in Tulsa is an industrial area. It is not as densely populated as the situation we have here in Oklahoma City. So in that sense, you're very correct. It's slightly different. I wanted to add one thing for your consideration, however, is that We will have 1,200 teams in Tulsa play soccer this year. Roughly half of them are children's teams, 8 years old, 11 years old, 13 years old. Their parents bring them to the game. They watch the game, then they take them back to the house. We expect to have 1,800 teams potentially in Oklahoma City because it's a stronger market. But the parents in Tulsa have voted with their wallets and their feet. Our number of kids' teams grows every year. And I think that's a testimony to how we run the facility. And they don't think their children are in any kind of unsafe or unhealthy or unsavory environment. So I would ask you to act positively on our application.
And my last question, David, is about parking. That issue's been raised, suggesting that there's not enough parking available for the players and patrons.
Well, we believe that there is enough parking. Right now, there were some big construction dumpsters that were in place, taking up a significant portion of the parking lot when they were removing all the trash. When all that is gone, there's parking along the back and along the west side. We feel it will. Also, on the northeast side, there's a business that maintains some parking spaces, and Soccer City has come to an agreement with the business that the business can use their facility during the day, and at night, Soccer City can use, I believe it's Argent's parking for their needs. So we think that our parking issue will be resolved between that business allowing us to use it and once all the construction dumpsters are moved.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Commissioners?
I have
Discussion?
a comment. Well, I appreciate the argument, David, that you're making, but as I've been listening to this, it's like a square peg in a round hole. The round hole is residential. The number of people that come to the facility, and if you have beer and wine consumption on the premises or whatever it is, I really disagree with your analysis that the consumption of beer in the parking lot is greater than what will be happening in a controlled environment. It's not controlled. You can sit and drink as much beer and wine as you want to. It's in totally the wrong location. I appreciate all the protests that were coming in here. If it was if it was anywhere else, and I have no disagreement whatsoever about the professionalism of the facility, how good you guys do. It's in the wrong place, in my opinion, for this kind of a license to be and I'm in favor of beer in places that go public, you watch football games, etc. That's good, but that's in a place far removed from houses, and you're surrounded by residential. And so I just can't support it. I would otherwise if it was anywhere else in the world. I would have said, well, in industrial, but this is it's too much residential. You're just surrounded by it, and I can't support it.
And to that point, this is definitely a unique situation in that you have a zoning of C3 that is around the neighborhood.
Well, that's why you're there. But you don't have the license to serve beer and wine, so
and I think
it's a different thing.
Examples all over the city where you have full-on bars that aren't curtailed like here, right in the middle of the neighborhood. You have the Red Rooster that sits right square in the middle of a neighborhood.
Well, I'm not exactly. We can argue that you're in the wrong place, in my opinion, for this kind of facility. That many people, that much potential beer and wine consumption, etc. That's my opinion.
I guess an analogy for me that might exist in the area, and you can call it a different setting or whatever, but if you go about a half mile back to the east, right in the heart of the Greens residential area, sits the Greens Country Club, where they serve beer, mixed drinks, alcohol. They have a pool. They have a tennis center. They have children there. Heaven forbid they're there while somebody might be drinking a beer at the pool. I mean, this collision that we seem to be inventing is Quail Creek Golf and Country Club sits right in the heart of a residential. Walnut Creek Golf and Country Club sits right in the heart of a residential area. Once again, at a facility where they all serve mixed alcohol, mixed beverages, beer, strong wine, at whatever hours they're entitled to operate, with children in the dining room, children in other places. I'm not necessarily I don't know if I'm there on this particular application, but I think this tension that we've developed over the years with respect to location of bars and facilities like that, I struggle with it because I go to other cities and I see, you go to Brooklyn Heights, New York, purely a residential area. Walk to full-service restaurant, full-service bars, but you can drive too. Their emphasis here is on residential traffic, but you can drive too. They're right on streets. I don't know how we circle these squares when we seem to be saying, no, not for soccer, but yes for golf and tennis. And other things located strictly, and I don't see, show me the difference. I mean, maybe you say you got more people, maybe you say you got, I don't know. But I think there's some history here with this particular location where, yeah, because, people do come. They have brought coolers. They have sat around and drank in the parking lot. It's not a whole lot different than what happens at the softball diamonds that the city provides, because they don't sell beer and alcohol there. But somehow we've got to wrestle this tension to the ground because other facilities are engaged in similar activities within a square mile of this very location. Quail Creek's right there, and Gaillardia, my goodness, same thing. So, I mean, I don't know how you say, gee, it's good here, gee, it's no here.
And to Mr. Hensley's point, I think the golf course is a great example. And in fact, I would argue that people are going to play golf. A large part of that, they're going to be drinking while they're playing 18 holes, whereas here, you're going to be playing an athletic event. You're not going to be drinking during that event. You're going to enjoy beer afterwards and leave. The focus isn't going to be on alcohol. So I think Mr. Hensley's example of a golf course, and like he said, they're all over the neighborhood, all over neighborhoods. Nichols Hills, you have Oklahoma City Golf and Country Club. So there are examples all over this city to where not only does it happen, but it happens and it works, and there are major issues.
Janice, you were going to say something?
Yes. I cannot support this application at this time. This is one of those sort of unfortunate locations where a business has changed hands. It sounds as though it will be for the better, but unfortunately you have inherited with the location some issues with the neighborhoods that surround you. And I think it's going to take some time and a track record to demonstrate that you can coexist. I won't get into debating the analogy to a country club. And I question, honestly, whether if country clubs weren't sort of built into the neighborhoods that develop around them, whether we would approve the location of those facilities in the places where they exist as a location where alcohol can be served and so forth. I personally, and I stress personally, do not take issue with service of alcohol in a facility where there are children in terms of, beer and wine sales and kids being present. That's not part of my concern here. But obviously there are issues with respect to traffic, parking, crime issues. There is a backlog of resentment, if you will, or tensions that have developed over time between the operation of this facility and the neighborhood that surrounds it that are not going to be improved by the introduction of alcohol sales. And therefore, I think, if over time the improvement of the operation of the facility is such that these concerns are alleviated, perhaps it would be worth revisiting. I do have some concerns about the idea that people are consuming alcohol here and then departing through a residential area. And I'm not sure that you can overcome that, but I can say that I'm not prepared to support this application today.
I would take a little different slant, David, than Janice did in the sense that I think a lot of neighborhoods have developed around country clubs because the country clubs were there, or they were part of the original planning for a neighborhood, and one of the things that appealed. I mean, there was going to be golf, but there's tennis, there's swimming pool, there are things for children to do, there's a dining facility, and so forth. And it sounds to me like this facility started out as something like that for this neighborhood. If there was once a swimming pool and other outdoor facilities, that this was probably an attraction for people to want to move into this area and live here. I see soccer in my experience, having coached my children when they were in school, and I'm grateful no one was drinking beer because I might have been beamed for a bad coaching call when I was doing that a number of years ago. I tend to agree with you that there needs to be some softening of the tensions between the residents and this facility. And it sounds to me, gentlemen, like you're going to be able to do that and that you're already well on your way. And it might be that 3 or 6 months from now, you get a different reception from this commission than you're getting today. There are 6 of us here, and 2 have already expressed the fact that they won't support this item today, which means on a vote of 4 to 6, it fails. Or did I miscount? We're 7? Oh, okay.
Well, and to Ms. Power's point on proving yourself, they'd be willing to take a limited license or a license where they have an agreement that if they don't live up to the standard that you guys want and the neighborhood wants within a year, it won't exist. I mean,
we can't take that license away once we grant it. We don't have the ability to do that. Do we, Nick?
No, I
you want to say something?
I don't think we can condition them.
I don't either.
But I've listened to all this. I think we're mixing some apples and oranges here. Parking. Is parking adequate there? No. I'll tell you right now, it's not. Parking was designed for a tennis facility with a few tennis courts and ever how many people that can play on those courts. Well, obviously, you can put a whole lot more people on a soccer field than you can a tennis court. The fact remains, that's not the application before us. They're operating, whether there's adequate parking or not, has nothing to do with this application. Whether we get along with our neighbors or not has nothing to do with this application. It's do you or do you not allow beer here? I agree that if these folks had a longer period of time to prove themselves, the neighbors may look more favorably upon their application. That much I absolutely agree with you and you, Janice. But the fact that, we started as a tennis club, now it's a soccer club. All the trappings that go with that have nothing to do with this application. This application is, do we sell beer, do we not? It's pretty apparent that your application is not going to pass today. I think you should consider extending or continuing it for 6 months and coming back. That would be my recommendation. You guys can think about that. The other thing I'd like to address on this is what Mike brought up about, neighborhood stuff. Janice says, well, people are going to drink and drive through the neighborhood. You know where I had dinner the other night, Janice? Cheaters. I had a beer. Drove past your house on the way home. Oops. We granted a softball complex an ABC overlay. So, what's inappropriate about the soccer complex? Well, the one thing that may be inappropriate is, yes, it is in the middle of the neighborhood. As David pointed out, this is a unique application. It's in the middle of the neighborhood. He also pointed out, with, I think, validity, the way this neighborhood lays out, and I walk it every morning is the traffic is going to go out to Meridian, and my guess is the vast majority of that traffic is going to flip back to 122nd Street. Some may go south to Hefner. I doubt it. Some will, but not a high volume.
Nick, on that point, I think it is important to note that when you're on Meridian, going northbound and southbound on Meridian, you can see the soccer facility from Meridian. It's not like set back
it's right there.
A residential area. It's just for those who may not be familiar with the area. It's right there.
No, it's right there. There's no question. So I really think our focus on the application needs to be not necessarily what the last guy did, whether there's adequate parking, not adequate parking. It is in an old CUP. That's how it got to be commercial in the first place. You're right. Right now, if somebody brought us something new, we wouldn't zone it C3 in the middle of the neighborhood. But it is zoned that way. I'm not certain it is inappropriate. I agree with some of the concerns the testers brought out, and maybe time will prove that. And that'd be my recommendation, suggestion. Matter of fact, I had an opportunity to talk with one of you gentlemen. I don't know who called me 5 or 6 months ago. And the one point I think we've talked a long time about is that this is a good, well-organized neighborhood, and you need to get with them and be on the same page with them. I don't think you're there yet. I think you can get there. I've heard 3 or 4 of the protesters tell us that in the short time you've been here, you're doing much better than the group that had it before. So maybe if you take some time, prove yourself, get these same folks to come back and cheer for you, you'll get a different answer. But as you can see, I don't think anybody, you need to count to 5 here to get this thing passed. And obviously there aren't 5 votes here.
We will we'll take a 3-month continuance if that's what this commission would like.
What's the date? December, last meeting in December?
There's only one, so the December meeting.
That works.
Okay, do we have a second? Do we have a motion, a second, to continue item 14 to December? Cast your votes. And we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 15 is SPUD 609, application by Apex Investment Partners to rezone 9000 West Britain from PUD 1112 to SPUD 609 in Ward 1.
Good afternoon. Jack Evans. I live at 1400 Fairclough Court in Edmond. I'm the principal at Apex Investment Partners. I also have a home building company by the name of Timbercraft Homes. We made an original application to rezone this from general office to residential 3 and 4. Per recommendations of this commission, we have come back with changes that were recommended, and we have staff approval, so we would like to proceed with this project.
It's up to me. If I could, I've met with the principal, with Jack, 2 or 3 different times, along with their engineer, Chris Gregg, gone over the original plan. I think now where we are, we have now 1, 2, 3. The unit's size has decreased from, what was it?
It was originally 20.
20, now we're down
17.
to 17. I think one of the concerns that we had earlier on was these are now limited to two-story units. We provided the common area amenity, which you see, which is kind of right out in the middle there. I think that one of the issues that we talked about, that I spent a lot of time talking with Jack about, is, and we met last week, about these elevations, which I think were in your package. And I think what you see is this is what is intended to be built in these buildings, okay? So these are two-story, kind of divergent, contemporary look apartments that seem to appeal probably to a younger, potentially more mobile demographic that have, like I said, some varying fronts. And I think one thing that you can't see from this particular elevation is that these back roofs are not flat. They kind of have just a little slight cast to them, primarily for drainage and otherwise.
That's right.
But to help that out. And the history of this property at County Line in Britain is originally it was going to be part of the commercial corner for that. It just hadn't gotten there. It's been a little checkered in its development past, and I believe the original developer is now gone.
I bought this property out of foreclosure.
Yeah, and so it's out of foreclosure. It's not out of character necessarily at the two-story height with that versus which is one of the things that we, before we even got anything down on paper, I said, look, 3 stories is not going to go there. It's not going to be something that's probably going to be well received because it overshadows everything for the rooftops out there. So, I think it's kind of if you can call Britton Road and County Line a bypass parcel, versus a commercial development, I think this is not a bad plan for small piece of land that gets a little more density probably than what we might normally look to. But it's not going to be a good commercial site anytime real soon. So I thought it was kind of a neat plan, frankly. So subject to any comments everybody has.
No one has signed up, Mike.
Oh, okay. I don't think we have any variances, do we?
No.
I'll move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 15. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
And with the understanding that these are
what we say is what we'll get.
Right, that is my intention to build that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 16 is C-6305, which is the final plat of Meadow Lake, Section 2 in Ward 1.
My name's Charles Allen with Allen Engineering. Scott Woodard with Meadow Lake Developments here also to answer any questions. Been trying to work with staff on going through all the technical evaluation. Just to give you a little bit of background, Meadow Lake Section 1 was originally developed and promoted as being a gated community. That was by Bell Development. Since then, Scott Woodard and Meadow Lake Developments had purchased the remaining portion, Section 2, and are intending on developing that as a gated community. They're in the process of getting the homeowners, in Section 1 to agree to vacate the existing road right-of-way, which is public now, and converting that to private so that they can actually gate the entrance off of Wilshire Boulevard. I believe they've got 70% of the homeowners that have signed the revised declaration of covenants to make that a private road. Then we'll proceed with vacation and replatting as a private road. I think one of the big questions the staff had was the amenities. We've provided Terry Massey with a letter that that they'll build a clubhouse and or a pool before there's 20% of the certificate of occupancy for Section 2, which would be 29 homes. I think those were the two main concerns staff had. We agree with all the technical evaluations, and then would like to clarify, I guess, that if we can get Section 1 to be private roads that before the plat goes to City Council, we would have add in on the right-of-way for the Section 2 to be private roads also. So we've designed everything in accordance with the City of Oklahoma City standards. All looks like it's a public roads right now, but we hope to come back before City Council and add in private on those.
Okay.
Be happy to answer any questions. I think there's one protest.
We do have someone signed up. Mr. Stinchcomb? If you'd give us your name and address, please.
Ron Stinchcomb, I live at 2000 Woodhill Road in Edmond.
Okay.
And my brother and I own the property immediately to the south of this proposed development. It's agricultural property right now. And with the layout, we're concerned about the volume and the direction of water coming off this development and what it will do to our property. We're concerned about erosion. It's agriculture. It's wheat farm right now. And as we understand, we see no provisions for any kind of water retention or anything on the south part of this. The developer has retention ponds in the north part of it, and we would like to see something similar to that to the south part so that we don't get all the water directed right onto our property.
Okay. We can tell you about the city ordinances, J.J. Is Curtis in the back, or do we know? We have one of our public works engineers to come out. He can explain the ordinance better than I can. Curtis, did you hear the question?
Yes, sir. Curtis Liggins of Public Works. The staff report shows that detention is not required. If it was required in the first phase, then it may accompany this portion, but the report says that it is not required. I believe a portion of the land is in the boundary that requires detention, and the other portion is not. But sometimes as a good neighbor gesture, the developer may put detention in place even though it's not required.
Yeah, there's sort of, Curtis, a general rule that when a site is developed, it's not supposed to add to the natural runoff that occurs. How does that work exactly?
If detention is not required, that the hard surface increase may increase the volume of water that leaves the property. So detention in areas where there's known flooding is designed to reduce that. But in a case like this where detention is not required, again, that we will make them meet the requirements of the ordinance. And there may be a good neighbor thing between them that if you want to get with the developer and or engineer and discuss some measures they can take to spread out the flow at the discharge point. We make them maintain the historic discharge point so they can route the water through their subdivision and by different means through the streets, through piping and channel. But the historic discharge point will be preserved. And it looks like there's an older pond that was on the property according to the map and a drainage channel. So they'll have to preserve those type of points, but they can bring the water through their site in different manners and paths. So it may concentrate the flow and increase it, but I mean, if that's something that they would have to work out between them.
I want to be real clear, I understand this. Once this property is fully developed, it cannot put any more water off on its neighbors than it is right now, can it?
If detention is not required, it can. And it
can?
Yes.
So, that's interesting.
The volume of water, because the land, it'll be streets and houses, the volume of water that doesn't, is absorbed by the soil, it'll leave the property and go through the natural path, back to the natural path where it previously discharged before the development.
So how is it determined then whether detention is required or not?
If there's known flooding according to the ordinance in that area, downstream from there, then detention is required.
So could you clarify for me, this property that's being developed originally was agriculture, and the water, when it fell on it, is dispersed kind of evenly along the whole property. And so now it's going to be basically paved over, and it's all going to be directed, looks like, to one street. So the volume will be increased, it appears to me, because the ground will not be there to absorb it. It'll run off, and it'll all be directed over to one area and flow right down on us. So it appears, I'm not an engineer, but it seems to me the volume and the direction are both being changed by the development.
But, I'm sorry, did I say something? You're correct, but that is allowed in development.
It is allowed.
Yes, where detention is not required. Because the detention pond is to maintain the historic discharge volume. So the pond is put in there to store the amount of water.
I understand the purpose of the detention pond, and that's kind of what we're asking for, if he would agreeable to do that, so that we're not damaged by the water that's created from this.
Yes, sir.
I imagine we'll have a substantial amount of erosion with it all directed to us in that area.
And there are measures that are required, if the detention pond was required, riprap and different things, to minimize the erosion at the discharge point, slow down the velocity of the water. If detention is not required, which by our report, it's not required in this particular section, if it was something that the developer and engineer agreed to do, that there are measures that they can take to help minimize that. We'll do
But
what...
if the developer doesn't agree to do it, then we suffer the consequences. Is that correct?
To the same level that's allowed by our ordinance, yes, sir.
I see.
That any other development in the area that doesn't require detention, if
Okay. So, at this point, we have no recourse. I mean, that's what the ordinances provide, so that's the way it's going to be.
if it's in agreement with the commission and the developer, if they would like to meet with us and discuss it, maybe we can get together and look at the particulars of the property.
Maybe it's just me, but this sounds off a bit. I had always had the impression, and I'm not sure where I got it, but I thought that the natural runoff that occurred before and after development had to be the same. In other words, I couldn't develop my property, be uphill from Nick's property, and pour an increased stream of water on his property, which might cause his property to erode and be of no use to him or of less use to him because of that. I'd like to know more. I'd like to really know more about that, because it doesn't seem to me that that's what I've understood historically. Nick, can you help me?
Well, I think that's probably a subject of a study session and not for this application. But maybe we can shortcut this a little bit. Charles, how does this land lie? Is he correct? Is your plat going to drain down on them?
Yes. I mean, there's approximately 30 acres, 27, 28 acres in our Section 2. About approximately 8.5 acres drain. Meadow Lake Drive is the north-south road on the eastern side of the property. There's approximately 8.5 acres that'll drain down Meadow Lake Drive. That stub at the end of at our south property line, stubs down there. We kind of have a double-edged sword here. We've got this development has one access point off of Wilshire Boulevard. Then when you get to our section where Meadow Lake Drive stops, we have internal loops in there that allow access through there. But to provide future access, we have one access point to the south, or a stub to the south, and then a stub to the west. We we're somewhat tied to trying to develop this in accordance with the preliminary plat. So we haven't varied that much. The historic discharge is to the south, and like I said, we've got 8.5 acres that drain down Narrow Lake Drive. At the end of that road, we have approximately 15 feet of riprap to dissipate that water and try to maintain sheet flow off our property.
Now, let me get away from engineering terms and put that in simple language. You're going to have basically 8.5 acres of rooftops, streets, whatnot, impervious things draining to the south onto this man's land. You have provided...
I'd like to add in there also manicured lawns and open...
Well, no, I understand. It's not a solid 8.5 acres of impervious. You will have a blade of grass out there somewhere. Yes. 2, okay. And to appease Commissioner Hensley, probably 2 trees in the front yard.
Correct.
That said, to mitigate that and to slow that flow, you're rip-wrapping your southern boundary.
The terminus of the road, yes.
Where the road's flowing down into him.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then we also have, as you go west, there's a flume that I think it has about 8.5 acres also that discharge to the south. Then the northwest portion of the property, if you can look up there on Prairie Time Road, there's a little pond kind of shown there. There's a low area there that the remaining portion drains to the west. Again, as Curtis said, we're trying to maintain the historic discharge points. That's one thing as engineers, we're not particularly allowed to change that natural flow. So what we do...
you need to mitigate the rate. And what Curtis is saying, and I believe that's always been my understanding, that we don't require detention. We're not proactive on detention. We only require it on an after-the-fact basis if there's known flooding. And that's where we probably don't do it right, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. But I was trying to figure out how we can fix your final plat to not increase the rate of flow. You're going to increase the flow. You have to, because it's flowing that direction.
Correct.
And you're taking raw land and building things on it. So there's going to be more water. There has to be. But it's a matter of how you handle and feed that water onto his agricultural land.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let me make a comment about that. In addition to the riffraff, or whatever you call it, on Meadow Lake Drive, is that it? Is there any consideration to putting a detention pond in the backyards of those homes that are on the southern portion of this plat, or just in the backyards? And I say that because a home that I'm involved in, that I own, we did an extensive remodel, and this is in a desert community, and we were required by, whomever we were, to put a detention pond to capture whatever runoff came off of my roof. That would be in substantial mitigation of the runoff that comes to the south. It's a matter of you build a little pond with rocks in it, and you know what that looks like, and it's in the backyard of these homes, so that the runoff, it captures that. So I understand the street, it's running down a paved street, but the rooftop runoff and all of that stuff, you could capture a whole bunch of it by just a detention pond in the backyard, and it could be landscaped. It wouldn't mess up anything. I think it'd be a very attractive thing, but that also captures it. Is there any consideration of you guys doing that?
I'm not sure that's practical, Bob, listening to
there are a lot of different...
it captures some of it. I'm just looking at, some of it.
We really started out wanting to answer Mr. Stinchcomb's question, and drainage is a separate issue from land use and zoning and what we're supposed to be here doing today. drainage is obviously a Public Works Department issue. Now, what we want to do with it in terms of regulations is something different, and that's maybe for another time. But I know you're quizzical, Janice, but we've got to figure out what to do with this particular application. And
say I am just astonished of all the years that I've sat here and all the an incredible number of conversations that I've had with people privately where I've assured them that we do not allow the amount of water
to increase
as a result of development.
Many of us had that impression, including me.
Yeah, so that's news to me. But I also think, it's part of what we decide when we decide these things. I don't think it's... the only reason that I haven't felt the need to be more involved in it is because I felt certain that, it was being taken care of by our wonderful technical staff, and that was the standard. We don't allow it to be increased, and so therefore I'm sure they're taking care of that, and I don't have to spend too much time looking at it on a case-by-case basis on these individual applications, but it clearly is part of what we are considering because it's part of every staff report we get. And, perhaps would make a huge difference in how we would decide many, if not most, of these cases if we thought that development was going to result in a significant increase in water being discharged from developed property onto the property of its neighbors. And I'm so sorry, Charles, that you're the beneficiary of sudden revelation.
I think we have to depend on our staff to make that decision, and I think that's their responsibility. Curtis?
If I could say this, that in line with the ordinance, we do what is required, and we ask certain measures as a policy as well. Like Charlie was talking about the riprap and increasing that amount, riprap at that point, or flow spreaders, trying to be even in the sense greener, if you would say. But to a certain extent, those things have to be worked out. If it's going beyond the ordinance and the requirement, have to be worked out between the developer and like most other things, then the surrounding property owners.
If you all will recall when we did the Glenhurst PUD on 122nd MacArthur, we had this very issue draining back to the east to the people that were just here, as a matter of fact, Summerfield, and they put in deflector type things to slow the drainage. It still goes there. There's still more water going than there was before. But they've slowed it down without a detention pond. Perhaps they could do something like that. I don't know. I'm sympathetic to the gentleman's concern. It looks to me like it's just a straight shot to the south, and I think that's what or at least 8.5 acres of it appear to be a straight shot to the south.
Well, I think we've...
Yeah, we'll look at it again. The plans are in review right now, the road and drainage improvement plans. Like I said, we haven't got any comments back, but we feel we've designed it in accordance with the Oklahoma City drainage ordinance. We are trying to slow the water down, reduce any erosion off of our property. Yes, the volume of water is going to increase, but we don't think we're going to damage the property to the south.
Any further discussion, Commissioners? Decision?
I guess the only thing I wanted to clarify is that Terry's asked us to, on the TE number 3, that we have the option to designate the roadway as private roads prior to going to City Council with the plat. I think that's the one. comment for TEs.
So you want to change TE3?
I just want to add on TE3 the option to designate the streets as private streets prior to going to City Council.
Going to city council for,
Final plat approval.
this is final plat approval.
To City Council, though, before the plat actually...
Before you do your dedications to the council?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to dedicate your streets if you don't want, I guess. As long as you build them to city standard.
That's the only way to allow us to have a gated community.
Okay, Commissioners? Go ahead, Janice.
Sorry, my head is reeling with the implications of this new information. If we allow the streets not to be dedicated and yet they serve as the primary point of drainage from this site, are we giving up our ability to control or monitor that drainage?
I don't think so.
No. All we're doing is the way that, as I understand this final plat as we're looking at it today, is it provides for public streets. And staff noticed a comment in there that, referring to private, and said, and that TE asked that it be removed. Applicant would say, no, we don't really want to remove it. We would like to retain the option of having private streets. So we should probably amend that to provide for the option to private streets. Should they exercise that option, then there just wouldn't be a dedication to the city of those streets. Everything else would be in accordance with this plat, and certainly the streets would have to be built to we're still going to inspect the streets to standards.
Streets will still be built to city standards.
That's not my question, but Curtis did answer my question. Would you repeat what you said?
That on the dedication on the plat, if there were private streets, it would say then that the public drainage easement and the utility easement would be public, but the street portion would be private.
Yes. Okay. And then the maintenance will be by the homeowners association rather than the city.
Okay, Commissioners? We ready?
I'll move approval, subject to the private street reservation or discussion that she's had with regard to taking it to council.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 16 as conditioned. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you, Charles. Item 17 is continued, so I guess that finishes the public hearing portion.
This one.
Planning Commission committees.
That's going to go down there. And
Planning Commission members.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I have something I'd like to say about
We'll go by ward.
Okay.
I went to the OKC plan. What would you call it? What was the thing that we had?
Was the goal setting?
Goal setting. You guys need to turn out for the one tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the zoo. I was the only planning commission there. I was very lonely. There needs to be a presence. We need to be showing both the staff and the citizens, I think, of the city that we're behind
I agree with
this.
that, by the way. We need to be involved in some of the committees, and some of us will be asked to be on the, I don't know if it's called the steering committee anymore, but the one that's got 20-some-odd people on it. There will be some planning commission member slots for that. Sadly, I'll be out of town tomorrow afternoon, Janice, so I will not be able to go there. And I wasn't here Tuesday either, so.
My turn.
Your turn.
On item number 11 of C-6298 that was continued, the staff report under B, relevant policies, says that this particular application, the OKC plan, designates this area for urban development. The map that's in OKC Plan 2000-2020 shows that item number 11 is in the area of rural development. I just want to know why. You know, look where number 11 is, and that's in the white rural development, and it's not urban development.
Not in the right place?
Huh?
Is it not in the right place?
No. Well, or 11's not in the right place.
I'll look at it.
Look at it. Well, all I'm saying is that I do rely upon the map, you know, and the map is something that's going to be developed over time with the OKC plan that's going on right now. And I love the map for a lot of reasons because I can tell where things are. But if it's in the wrong place, then I need to know that. It needs to be, you know, looked at maybe a couple of times. That's my only comment.
Nick, did you have something?
Yes, and Bob set it up beautifully. I also rely on the map, but I rely on a couple of other maps. And they're all old. A number of years ago, Traffic gave us a huge map of the city showing all the most recent traffic counts on that map. I find that a very valuable tool in reviewing applications. And if we could get an update of that, and then the other map I use is one that the fire department has provided, and we're showing response times and circles around each station with the various response times. And again, this is way out of date. We could have updates to those. At least I find them very helpful. I suspect everyone else would also.
Well, my turn. I thought our drainage discussion today was interesting and eye-opening. I agree with Commissioner Allen that we need to rely on our staff and their expertise. I also think that it's part of our responsibility to have some understanding of what issues such as the drainage ordinances are, so we understand maybe better what we're doing. I'm reminded of DHS and what's going on there right now, and maybe some of their board members relied on staff too, and I don't mean to consider our staff in the same vein at all, but I think we have a responsibility to have a better understanding, and if there's something we think is amiss, maybe we should be looking at it. And I think maybe there is in that case. I'm concerned that we are permitted to increase the drainage off of our property onto someone else's. And we've seen some pretty egregious examples over the years of the damage that sort of thing can do. So maybe we do a study session on that and get a better understanding of drainage than maybe some of us, me for one, have had.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, and I actually agree also with Commissioner Allen. I thought I was relying on the staff to take care of this, but what I thought I was relying on them to do was to assure me that there was no additional runoff as a result of development. So it was my misunderstanding of their mission, I guess.
Well, as I say, I think they've been doing their job. I've misunderstood maybe exactly what that was, and that's on me and not on staff, but I think I'd like to know more about it and then figure out if we think that's right. Planning Department.
We had mentioned the what's called the Citizens Advisory Team, which we're looking for your membership on in conjunction with City Council, and that will be going to City Council next week for their approval of that process and to call for applications to participate on that committee. So that's next week. I'm not sure how much time we're giving for people to submit applications, but look at those categories and discuss it with your council member and look at who's been participating so far and who we think would best represent the interest in terms of being able to come to a conclusion that considers all interests in developing the plan.
Russell, is it currently thought that there will be a particular number of planning commissioners per se who will
We have
serve?
4 and 4. And that's not to say that we are not welcoming everybody to show up all the time. So if you're not the chosen representative for the ward, then I would certainly encourage people to still show up. Clearly, this is an extremely important process and document. So.
And it's going to come back and be on us ultimately to approve and adopt and so forth, whatever's proposed.
So we'll look at the drainage for a study session. Janice and I talked a little bit before about looking at the Strong Neighborhoods Initiative, which is another program that we're in the process of developing as well. So we'll bring that to a study session at some point in the future. And there will be others.
Development Services. I have a question for Municipal Councilor or Nick. You raised an issue, or you and Commissioner Bright maybe raised an issue a while back and asked the Municipal Councilor's office to look at a situation that was up on the Kirkpatrick, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
the billboard.
Billboard issue?
Yeah, what's the status of that? Do we know?
I do not know, but I'll find that out for you.
It's my understanding that there was a notice given. They have subsequently gone ahead and put advertising on the billboard, front and back.
Took the notice seriously, did they?
And retained counsel. Their counsel has been in contact with the municipal counselor's office as to their options, and I believe that at this point they're considering their options.
I'm glad to have that cleared up. Citizens to be heard. Anything, Susan? I don't mean to pass over you.